You're listening to the Easy Feed Podcast, episode number 36, How to Reduce Your Baby's Risk of Developing a Food Allergy. Hi there, I'm Karina Savage, and with over 20 years experience feeding children, including my own, I've learnt all the secrets that busy mums need to get their children eating better and actually enjoying healthy foods. So a huge welcome to the Easy Feed Podcast. Welcome back. It's great to have you. Today we are talking about reducing the risk of food allergies in babies. Look, I totally understand how confusing and overwhelming starting solids can be. As a new mum myself, when my daughter was starting solids, I often second-guessed myself. It was a very confusing time. It was a very frustrating time when she wouldn't necessarily eat the way I wanted her to eat. And when you throw food allergy into the mix, it can make things 10 times more stressful because food allergy is rife in Australia. We have about 10% of children being allergic to various foods such as milk, soy, egg, fish. They're probably the most common ones. We have tahini, we have sesame, we have shellfish. We have all sorts of weird and wonderful allergies. But, the common ones we have are milk, soy, egg, fish, nut, wheat as well. So it's really important to make sure that as parents, we are doing everything we can to reduce our baby's risk of developing a food allergy. So how does a food allergy begin, you may ask? Well, look, you can be at risk of developing food allergies if your parents are what we call allergic or atopic. So if your parents have hay fever or eczema or a food allergy themselves, then the baby may be more at risk of developing a food allergy. So genetics will certainly either increase or reduce your risk of developing a food allergy, but then plenty of other factors will influence your risk of food allergy. And a huge one is how the gastrointestinal tract, meaning the immune system, develops in a baby. How that develops will significantly influence a baby's risk of developing a food allergy. So a food allergy occurs when the immune system mistakenly identifies a normal, harmless protein. So it could be a cow's milk protein, or it could be a soy protein or a peanut protein. And the body identifies that protein as a threat. So instead of when the protein is presented to the cell surface in the gut, because what happens is the baby eats the food protein and it goes into the stomach, goes into the gastrointestinal tract, and at the cell surface in the gastrointestinal tract, normally the body would recognize that protein and go, okay, it's time to digest you and absorb you and get on with the day. But in babies and children and adults with food allergies, the body sees that food protein as a risk, as a threat, and basically strikes war against this food protein. And when that happens, that's when you get that inflammatory cascade and that basically the allergy starts. And that's when you get the allergic symptoms occurring. And it's that body's natural immune defense kicking into gear when really it shouldn't be. So the body is actually abnormally responding to a food protein that it should normally be digesting and absorbing and tolerating, but instead it's actually striking war and trying to get rid of that food protein, and that's why the allergic reaction occurs. It's a similar response to when a virus is presented to the cell surface. The body recognizes that as a foreign protein, like a foreign enemy, basically, and strikes out war and tries to kill off the virus by producing an inflammatory response. And so it's similar in a way reaction. The body's viewing the food protein as an enemy. Similar thing with people with celiac disease. When the food protein gluten is presented at the cell surface in the gut, the body sees that and recognizes that as an enemy. Rather than going, okay, I know gluten, I'm just going to digest you and absorb you. It's like, nah, this is not right. This is foreign, and it strikes out war. It creates this anti-inflammatory cascade of inflammatory cytokines, they're called, to be technical. And then you get the symptoms and the damage that occurs to the gut with celiac disease. So in a way, it's a similar process. The body is recognizing something as foreign when it's actually not foreign, but the body is actually deciding that it doesn't want this food protein. And so when we talk about babies actually developing oral tolerance, it's meaning oral tolerance for those food proteins. So it means that when they eat the wheat, or when they eat the egg, or when they eat the milk protein, or when they eat the nut, the body tolerates it and digests it and absorbs it as normal. It doesn't have this allergic reaction and this cascade of immune response, which then causes all of those allergic symptoms that we see. And those symptoms could be vomiting, could be diarrhea or blood in the stool. Those symptoms could be lip swelling, tongue swelling, breathing difficulties, a big rash or hives all over the face. So the symptoms can be very variable. In some situations, you have a 2-hour delay and then profuse vomiting. So there's a huge array of different symptoms that can present as an allergic reaction, a food allergy. So it's really important to understand that a food allergy can present many ways and not always straight away. It's often, or sometimes, delayed. So I mentioned a family history of food allergy or atopic conditions such as eczema or hay fever meaning that your baby has an increased risk. There are other factors that will potentially increase their risk of developing a food allergy, and there is still a reasonable amount of data to suggest that how you're born, whether you're born via cesarean section or vaginal delivery, will influence the risk of developing food allergy. There's a little bit of controversy because there was an Australian study that came out a couple of years ago now, effectively debunking that. But then there's been more research that's come out again to support the earlier data to suggest that it does have a link, it does play a role. So babies born via cesarean section do have a different gut microbiota, and then that does increase the risk of developing food allergy. So mode of delivery is likely to influence risk of food allergy, as is whether you're breastfed or formula fed, as is whether you're given antibiotics as a baby or not. Because if you're given antibiotics, and look, don't get me wrong, sometimes you need to give a baby antibiotics just to keep them alive and healthy, and that's the most important thing. But antibiotics does change that microbial balance of good bugs and bad bugs in the gut. And especially in that first 4 to 6 weeks when that baby's gut is developing, well, it's developing over the first 3 years of life, but definitely in that first 4 to 6 weeks, any antibiotics will significantly influence that development of that really positive gut microbiome and the development of the immune system, and it will increase the risk of developing food allergy. So, there's things that will definitely influence risk, but at the end of the day, some things are out of your control. And so you've just got to do the best you can. And that's why I'm here to give you some other ways that you can reduce your baby's risk of developing a food allergy, especially when we're looking at food and what we're eating as mums and also what we're feeding our babies. Okay, so if we start off with the first way to reduce your baby's risk of developing a food allergy, well, the first one is actually to do with you when you're pregnant with your baby, because the maternal diet does play a role in the baby's developing immune system. And if you as the mother are eating a diverse and balanced intake of plenty of whole foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains and whatnot, that's going to help support a healthy gut microbiome for you. And it's likely also going to pass on in terms of the benefits to your baby. And it may help reduce the likelihood of developing allergies, especially if they're being exposed to a variety of those food allergens through your maternal diet, because babies get exposed to these various nutrients in utero. Okay, so how the mother eats will influence the baby's health. And that's why it's really important as a mum, as a pregnant mum, as much as possible to have the variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, lots of healthy fats, foods rich in omega-3s such as fish, walnuts, flax seeds. They also have anti-inflammatory properties, and including the milk, the soy, the egg, the wheat, the fish, the nuts will help your baby develop immune tolerance in utero. And then absolutely, definitely when breastfeeding, if you're eating those things, it's going to pass through into the breast milk. And look, different mums will be different secretors. Some mums are really high secretors of protein. Some mothers are lower secretors of protein, but protein definitely passes through the breast milk to the baby. So if you as mum is consuming egg or soy, that will pass through to the baby and will help develop immune tolerance or a tolerance for those food allergies. Okay, number 2 relates to their milk source. So as a baby, they're either going to be breastfed or formula fed. And look, whilst breastfeeding has numerous benefits for not only your baby's health, but for the mother's health, it's sometimes not possible. And so there's absolutely no judgment if you are not able to breastfeed your child for whatever reason. If you are, then that's amazing for your child and for yourself. And I would aim to exclusively breastfeed for the first 6 months, and then you're obviously starting solids by then. But if you're not able to breastfeed, then there's plenty of other things that we can do to support your baby's immune and gut. So infant formula has come a long way, and the properties that I'm going to explain now about breast milk is what formula companies have tried to mimic as closely as possible, so that formula-fed babies are still obtaining, as close to the similar benefits that breastfed babies are. And look, we're never going to be able to be the same as Mother Nature in any respect, whether it's breast milk or anything that Mother Nature creates. She's phenomenal, and we try to get close, and we do our best. And that's why formula has come so far over the last 20 years. And it will continue to improve because basically science works out why breast milk and how breast milk is beneficial for babies and then tries to replicate that in formula for babies. But breast milk contains important antibodies, prebiotics, nutrients that really help strengthen the baby's immune system. And it adapts and evolves and changes. So the protein concentration changes every month that the baby gets older. The nutrient composition, it adapts and evolves according to the baby's age, which is incredible. And that's why you have different stages of infant formula. You have the 0 to 6 months and then the 6 to 12 months, because again, science is trying to copy what Mother Nature is doing. And of course, the 0 to 6 months is set for 6 months and the 6 to 12 months is set for 6 months. You're not going to be able to adapt like the breast naturally would in terms of the breast milk produced, but that's why we have those different categories of formula, because the nutrient composition of breast milk changes, and so the formula companies are trying to mimic that as closely as possible. Breast milk is more easily digested than a lot of the infant formulas, and that's why sometimes there will be more gut issues with babies that are formula fed. Breastfed babies do have a lower risk of gastrointestinal infections, allergies, other infections such as upper respiratory and middle ear infections, obesity in later life, type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And breastfed babies are also less likely to be hospitalized for infections and illnesses. There's also a lot of benefits to the mother as well, in terms of it helps them lose some of the weight after baby's birth. It helps their uterus return to its normal pre-pregnant state faster. It may reduce the mother's risk of developing diabetes if she had gestational diabetes in pregnancy. And it also reduces the risk of ovarian cancer and premenopausal breast cancer. It may also reduce the risk of osteoporosis. But as I said, if breastfeeding isn't possible, then there is no judgment or guilt, even though I've just reeled off a whole lot of benefits. You can't change what you can't change. And that's where I'm saying that we need to pick a formula that has a lot of these benefits that science has learnt about, and we are now putting into, or they are now, I should say, not me, as I have no association with infant formula companies, but they are now putting into these infant formula because they have identified that these nutrients are valuable. Nutrients such as choline, which is really important for brain development. nutrients such as pre and probiotics, which are important for that development of gastrointestinal tract and development of immune tolerance. Omega-3 fatty acids, so the DHA, especially for brain development, neurological development for babies. So there's some plenty of good things. So if you can't breastfeed, then please don't stress, because your baby will still be getting a lot of great nutrition through these formulas. And there are food standards, which mean that pretty much every infant formula that you will see on the supermarket shelf or the chemist shelf has to meet these standards, these nutritional standards for babies in Australia. It's food standards for Australia and New Zealand, actually. So most of those formula that you see will be similar. Some will have more of, this pre or probiotic, and some will have more of this protein or this omega. But really, at the end of the day, they're all very comparable in terms of their base ingredients, and they're all going to meet the nutritional needs of a baby. Having said all of this, if your baby, though, is at increased risk of food allergy because you've had another child that's got a food allergy, or you or your partner have a food allergy, or you or your partner have eczema, or your baby's already got a food allergy, then you may want to consider using what we call an HA formula, which is like a partially hydrolyzed formula. So you'll see it written as hydrolyzed whey protein. And I'm not talking about the extensively hydrolyzed formula. So I'm not talking about the Aptamil Allopro or the Neocate or the Novalac allergy formula. I'm talking about hydrolyzed formula where the protein's just been slightly chopped up, so it's slightly less allergenic. So I'm talking about formulas such as the NAN Sensitive or the Aptamil Pro Cineo. So both of those have hydrolyzed whey protein, so it's slightly chopped up, and they also have pre and probiotics. So if you've got a baby that doesn't have any allergies right now, that is formula fed, but is at risk of developing food allergy, then you could consider a partially hydrolyzed formula such as the NAN Sensitive or the Aptamil Pro Cineo. If your baby already has a food allergy, then you would have already moved on to what we call one of the more hypoallergenic formulas, and that is where the protein is extensively chopped up, basically into amino acids, and is hypoallergenic. So theoretically, 98% of children should not react to that formula. I've, been doing this for 22 years, and I have had children that haven't tolerated those formula, but they're far and few between. And it's because they are basically free from any of those intact proteins that are going to cause an allergic reaction at the gut level. If your baby does have a food allergy and you're feeling lost and confused, then please reach out. I specialize in this area. I've researched babies in this area, and more than happy to help. Okay, so we've covered 2 ways that you can reduce your baby's risk of food allergy. First of all, we've got maintaining a diverse diet during pregnancy and breastfeeding. Number 2, breastfeeding if possible, and if not possible, choosing a formula with pre and probiotics and potentially like a partially hydrolyzed whey or an HA formula, in other words. Number 3 is introducing gut-friendly solids to your baby. And by this, I mean we need to try to keep it as wholesome and unprocessed as possible. We want to keep it simple and include fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes where possible in your baby's diet. Now, look, I'll take this moment to let you know that I have a brilliant Feeding Babies program, which is inside Nourishing Kids, my membership. And you have free, unlimited access to that program, as well as me, where you have direct access to me to answer any questions inside our private chat group. And also we have a monthly Zoom live call where you can ask me any questions as well. So if you are wanting support, starting solids, introducing foods to your baby, you want a clear, succinct plan that's going to set you and your baby up for success and long-term health for your baby, then please check out my Feeding Babies program inside my membership. We would love to have you in there. We have a wonderful group of mums in there who support each other often daily. So check that out. We'll include the link in the show notes, but you can head to my website, nourishwithkarina.com/membership, and you'll find out all the details. So why do we want to include these gut-friendly solids to your baby? We want to include these whole foods because they are rich in fiber, and that otherwise known as prebiotics. That's the sexy name for fiber. So if you ever hear prebiotics, it's really plant fibers. And the plant fibers feed the healthy bugs in our gut. And this means that it stays in good balance. The good bugs and the bad bugs are in great balance. They're in what we call symbiosis. And that means that the immune system can develop and work and operate to its full capacity. Babies that have a healthy, balanced gut microbiome have a much lower risk of developing food allergy. It's documented. It's in the research. It's proven. So if you can prepare these homemade foods that are rich in these plant foods and avoid processed foods as much as possible, then you're going to be doing the best by your baby. Because often these processed foods also contain additives and preservatives and other substances that can negatively impact your baby's developing immune system and gut health. So pouch food is okay to include at some meals and snacks, and it's very versatile and easy to throw in your bag, but do check to make sure there's no preservatives. And just remember that the processing and the fact that it can last in a pouch for an extended period of time does come with a cost. So there will be a reduction in some nutrients, and fibers also often compromised there. So pouch food can have its place, but try not to make it, one meal every single day that's pouch food. Another thing you want to be mindful of is the puffed baby snacks and also toddler snacks. So as your baby moves into toddlerhood, be really mindful of the puffed potato sticks. So many out there now that are often laden with salt and sugar. I'm actually about to talk about this on TV in a couple of days' time about how 9 out of 10 toddler snacks do not meet international recommendations. And the World Health Organization has come out with a position statement recommending that there's a revision of the food standards on toddler foods, because in Australia, our infant foods are regulated. There's a restriction on the amount of salt and sugar that can be added to our infant foods, but not on our toddler foods, which is absolutely crazy. I do not understand it. And we really need to be mindful of how much salt and sugar is in our toddler packaged foods. So just be really careful of that, especially if you've got a baby and also a toddler, that if your baby is consuming some of these toddler muesli bars and whatnot, they can often be quite laden with sugar, or these little mini rice cakes that are covered in yogurt, or these little yogurt pops that if you look at them, the second ingredient is sugar, and they're like 65% sugar. So they are absolutely not healthy, but they are marketed as being healthy, and this is a real issue. So where possible, stick to whole foods, include high-fat healthy options such as mashed avocado and mashed sardines, extra virgin olive oil, salmon, nut butters, and obviously, your typical fruits and cereals and meat and veggies as well. But we just really want to be focusing on the nutrition that's going to fuel your baby's gut bugs and keep your baby's immune system in good check, because that's going to mean that they're going to have a reduced risk of developing food allergy and also reduced risk of sickness and other health problems. Okay, moving on to number 4, don't delay, get the allergy foods in early. And look, whilst it can be super stressful, and I've certainly, when I used to work in a children's hospital, you would hear all the time about mums, and I totally get this. There were beautiful parklands outside where I used to work, the Women's and Children's Hospital in Adelaide. There still is beautiful parklands there, and parents would commonly have peanut butter parties. So they would bring their babies there. They would introduce peanut butter to their babies at this party. And if any of them reacted, then they literally would walk across the road into emergency and be treated. So very smart, very clever. And it was just the way that they could reduce their anxiety around introducing peanuts to their babies. I get it. I get how stressful it is, especially if your baby already has a food allergy and then you've got to continue on and introduce other food allergens. It's hugely stressful because you're worried that they're going to develop another allergy and have an even worse reaction. But at the end of the day, we need to be mindful of the fact that delaying the introduction of food allergens will actually increase your baby's risk of developing a food allergy. In the olden days, they used to say, wait till after 1 to introduce the food allergens to your baby. But now the research is telling us that people are introducing peanuts to babies at even 4 months of age. And it's actually reducing their risk of developing food allergy. Now, when I say that, we don't want peanuts to be given whole because that's obviously a choking risk, but definitely peanut butter introduced somewhere between, that 4 to 6 months of age is absolutely fine. But look, it doesn't have to be. As long as peanuts and eggs are introduced by 8 months of age, that's when you really want to have them introduced by. But certainly you can introduce them anytime from 4 months when you start solids, or if you don't start solids till 6 months, you introduce some iron-rich foods first and then you get in the peanut butter. Absolutely fine. Very, very good option. And this is exactly what I go through in my Feeding Babies program. I give you a step-by-step guide as to how to introduce solids, including introducing those allergen foods. When introducing allergenic foods, the food allergens, I always encourage mums to offer mid-morning so that you can watch your baby over the day in case they do have a reaction. So signs to watch out for might be a rash or hives. It might be swelling of the lips, face, or tongue. Could be vomiting or diarrhea, difficulty breathing, coughing or wheezing, or increased irritability or excessive crying. So I don't want to freak you out because, let's be honest, but 9 out of every 10 babies will introduce food proteins, will introduce those allergenic foods and be completely fine and not react and not have a food allergy. But there will be 1 out of every 10 that will react. Okay, number 5 relates to using a probiotic supplement where needed to reduce your baby's risk of developing a food allergy. Now, I would recommend using a probiotic supplement in these situations. Firstly, if your baby was a high risk of developing food allergy, as I discussed before, or if your baby had already been exposed to antibiotics, or your baby was born by a cesarean section. I think at this stage, the evidence is still there to support giving them probiotics to help reduce their risk of developing food allergy. Probiotics will only aid to support that balance of good and bad bugs. And remember, having a really good balance of those good and bad bugs that support that healthy gut microbiome, support immune tolerance, and support the development of the gastrointestinal tract, and really reduces your baby's risk of developing food allergy. So if we're needing to top up with some good probiotics, I would look for either the Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, the Lactobacillus reuteri. They're good. So those 2 lactobacillus are quite good. In fact, there's some good studies coming out of Melbourne in relation to babies that already have allergies and the use of the Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, the LGG probiotic, helping young children to outgrow their food allergy using this probiotic in conjunction with what we call immunotherapy. So if your baby is at high risk or has already had a situation where their gut microbiome may have been affected, then giving your baby some probiotics is likely to only support the development of their immune system. We have to remember that every baby is unique and every baby's risk factor will be completely unique. It will be based on the parent's genetic makeup, the parent's, history of allergies or lack of history of allergies, how the baby's born, whether the baby's breastfed or formula fed, even factors such as whether the baby has siblings or dogs or whether you grew up on a farm. They all influence the risk of food allergy because there's this whole hypothesis around being exposed to bugs and how that can actually strengthen your immune system, and how if we are too clean and sterile, that actually compromises or kind of creates a poorer balance of the good and bad bugs. So we actually need to be exposed to bugs to help develop the gastrointestinal tract, and we don't want to be too clean. There's even been studies to suggest that babies that play in dirt, that can in turn support the development of the gastrointestinal tract because, again, they're exposed to different microbes in the soil. So you can see that there's a huge range of factors that will influence your baby's immune system and how your baby's immune system develops, and therefore their risk of developing food allergy. So just to summarize, here are 5 key ways that you can reduce your baby's risk of developing food allergy. Number 1, when you're pregnant, maintain a diverse diet, a healthy diet, rich in whole foods, rich in fruits, vegetable, lean proteins, whole grains, nuts, seeds, healthy fats are really important as well. And also when you're breastfeeding, don't avoid anything. Keep all the allergens in and keep eating a healthy, balanced diet as well. Because again, it's only going to benefit you and your baby, and exposing your baby to all those food allergens in breast milk will be beneficial to them. Number 2, breastfeed if possible, because that is going to be absolutely best for your baby. If not possible, then choose a formula with pre and probiotics. And that's because that's what they're missing out on by not being breastfed. 30% of the weight of breast milk is made up of what we call these prebiotics, which is really important for the development of your baby's gut microbiome. And so that's why you want to make sure that we're giving them a formula that's got these prebiotics as well, because we want the baby's gut to develop and we want their immune system to be strong and robust. So if it's not possible to breastfeed, then choose a formula with pre and probiotics. And if your baby is at high risk of food allergy, then I would consider choosing a formula that has hydrolyzed whey protein rather than that whole milk protein. It just may help reduce their risk of developing food allergy. It's not going to guarantee it, absolutely not, but it just might be more gentle on their gut because that is closer to the protein type that will be in breast milk. Number 3, introducing gut-friendly solids to your baby. So when I said whole unprocessed foods before, I didn't mean actually give your baby the food in its whole entirety, because that would be a choking risk. But I mean whole foods as in, when people say whole foods, they mean unprocessed. They mean the food as it is. So cooked, pureed up, or mashed, or it can be left, if you're doing baby-led weaning, it can be soft chunks of food. But when I say whole foods, unprocessed foods, I mean not tampered with. They haven't had additives and preservatives mixed with them. They're not in a packet or a pouch. So if we can, as much as possible, give them that real wholesome food. And if you are relying on some of those convenience pouch foods, try to limit them to when you're out and about. When you're home, try to give food that's home cooked as much as possible, because most of the time that food is going to be higher in nutrition. Even if it's frozen peas that you steam and puree up or mash up, it's still going to be much higher in nutrition. But frozen vegetables can still be very nutritious for your child. So just trying to stick to basic, wholesome, homemade foods as much as possible is only going to benefit their gut health. Even things like tin legumes, tin baked beans, tin chickpeas, tin lentils, mash them up. They're very nutritious for your baby. Mashed avocado, tin sardines, just pop them out of the tin, wash them, rinse them. You reduce the sodium and salt by 80%, mash them up with some avocado. Brilliant for your baby. Avoid the salty puffed toddler foods, the sweet muesli bar toddler foods as much as possible if you've got an older toddler that's around, because those foods aren't going to be as beneficial for your baby's gut health. Number 4, don't delay. Get the allergy foods in early. And number 5, if needed, use a probiotic supplement. So as I said, I've got all of this information for you at your fingertips when you join me inside Nourishing Kids. It's my Feeding Babies program and all the resources that you need to start solids with your baby. And you've got direct access to me in our private chat group, and we also catch up on a group Zoom call monthly. So please head to nourishwithkarina.com/membership to learn more about how you can join today. And I'll also pop some more information in the show notes for further reading. There's a great website called ASCIA, Australian Society for Clinical Immunology and Allergy, that has some good information on how to introduce solids to babies for allergy prevention, and some other useful links. We'll pop them in the show notes too. So thank you for listening. Appreciate you being here. Please feel free to share this podcast with your friends. If you've got friends that have had babies, if you're in a mother's group, please feel free to copy and paste the link to all of them to share this so that we can get this information out to more mums to help reduce the risk of babies with allergies, and just to support mums to reduce the stress and the burden of starting solids and feeding babies. So thanks so much for being here. Can't wait to chat to you next time. Bye for now.